episode 18 of Descent into the Wormhole, where we discuss everything from ancient civilization to modern day social issues. I'm Les.
And I'm Stevie J, and today we're going to take a look at one of the most important and mysterious events of our modern history, the assassination of JFK. So this is a big one. Grab that coffee, set the cruise control, and maybe a little tinfoil hat, and let's get into it. Oh, now this is a big one, and it's a super important one, I feel. So how are you feeling about it?
I feel good about it. I feel good. I just want to preface by saying we are not making anything up. If other people have made things up and we're repeating it, that's all that happened.
Right.
These are
Exactly.
our opinions and other people's theories, with a little bit
Exactly.
of our own theory as well, but it's just our opinion.
Well, right. I mean, what we're going to talk about is other people's theories and opinions as well that we're discussing. But towards the end, and this will be a at least a two-part series because there's so much to cover here. But what we discuss at the end, and we will give our thoughts and theories and opinions based on what we've read, researched, and found. So,
Hmm.
yes, a good little disclaimer there. And I just want to say as well. I mean, I know this is a big deal for Americans, particularly,
Yeah.
and a lot of people still get quite emotional about the fact that Kennedy was killed, and I understand that. And so when we talk through this, we are we're not trying to disrespect anybody throughout it, especially the Kennedy family, but there's a lot of things that need to be discussed and need to be talked about around why this happened. So, part
Hmm.
one, we're going to talk about some theories. We're going to talk about, why he may have been assassinated, what the motivations were. So, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting. And I also want to just apologize. We can't put everything in. If we put everything in, it would be a year long, escapade. So if we miss something and you think it's important, please put it in the comments. And also would love to hear your theories as well of why
Absolutely.
and how and who.
Yep.
So many
Absolutely.
questions. So many questions.
100%. So, did you want to start off by uh, going through the top five conspiracy theories? Now, I do this when I say that because I'm
Yes.
not a fan really of the word conspiracy theories or the words conspiracy theories because really it's just ideas. It's just
Yeah.
ideas and thinking outside the box normally. But yeah, should we go through the top five of what is listed as conspiracy theories?
Would love to. Would love to. Okay. Want me to start it off?
Yeah, you kick it off. Absolutely.
Okay. So the first one is the Grassy Knoll. In 1964, the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and that Jack Ruby also acted alone when he killed Oswald 2 days later. But most people don't seem to accept that the assassination was the work of a lone gunman. The House of Representatives may be partially to blame for this enduring conspiracy theory. In 1976, the Select Committee on Assassinations, which reinvestigated JFK's killing as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s, concluded that there was probably a second shooter on the Grassy Knoll, a hill overlooking the site where Kennedy was assassinated in his motorcade. In 1982, yet another committee examined the evidence. The National Academy of Sciences Committee on Ballistic Acoustics found that reliable acoustic data do not support a conclusion that there was a second gunman. But the theory lives on.
Very, very interesting. And the number two one, which is the Umbrella Man. So if people have seen that image of the Umbrella Man there, and I can't help it, but I keep thinking of that Umbrella guy who's the the YouTuber. But
Yeah.
the Umbrella Man, it says, why would someone carry an umbrella on a sunny day? Clearly, people who believe the Umbrella Man conspiracy never get sunburn. Louis Stephen Witt carried a black umbrella with him to Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, and was caught in the famed Zapruder film, raising it into the air as Kennedy's car drove past. Some have claimed he was giving a signal. Others think he could have shot a poisoned dart from the umbrella. But the truth is much less exciting. During a 1978 interview with Witt, he revealed that he simply wanted to heckle the president. Apparently, Witt, a conservative type fellow, had heard the umbrella was a sore spot with the Kennedy family due to its association with British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, who, like JFK's father Joseph Kennedy, supported appeasement prior to World War II.
So that's all it was. It was a heckle.
Yeah,
It was a heckle.
it
And
was
there
like
was a gentleman. There was a gentleman that he did up this mock-up of this drawing of how he's like, I know how he did. I know how he did. So he had like this umbrella, the drawing of this umbrella with like a gun inside of it that you could. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. Like, how is this like little umbrella stick holding up this gun
right. And how
with
does putting it up
a
in the
scope?
air?
Yeah,
Right.
it is
Yeah.
like
Well,
how do you do like
well, we're
a
gonna
trained marksman with an umbrella
we're,
fashioned together with a gun?
we're gonna get into some marksmanship stuff a little bit later, but like, yeah, you have to aim. You have to aim.
Yes, you have to aim, or it's mayhem.
Right. Exactly. Oh
Oh,
yes,
it's so
bless their
funny.
cotton socks. Bless their
Yeah, but it
cotton
was
socks.
odd to it is odd to see some
Right.
dude just standing there with an umbrella. And the first thing I thought when I saw it, I'm like, well, maybe he's sun sensitive.
Right.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the signal theory makes a little bit of sense. Like, if it was to
Yeah,
signal somebody, that kind of makes a bit of sense. But,
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, also you've got to consider that if it was a clandestine operation and it was spies and things like that, it'd probably be a little more subtle than a big umbrella on a sunny day.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, like you might give like a wink or like a touch the nose or like pull
Yeah.
the ear or something, but
Yeah.
yeah, a
Flash
big
of the
old
trench coat, something other than what happened.
maybe the old top knob, who knows?
Okay.
Okay.
So going on to the next one, it was a mob hit. The Kennedys were no strangers to organized crime. In fact, some believe the mafia helped JFK steal the election in 1960 by securing votes in key states of Illinois. However, another conspiracy theory has a political dynasty at odds with the mob. This theory hinges on the fact that Kennedy was unsuccessful in overthrowing Fidel Castro in Cuba, meaning the mafia run casinos remained shut down, and that his brother Robert Kennedy was cracking down on the mob in his role as Attorney General, pursuing a case against Jimmy Hoffa. Robert Kennedy had a fear that he had somehow gotten his own brother killed, according to a biographer, Evan Thomas. That Robert Kennedy's attempts to prosecute the mob and to kill Castro had backfired in some terrible way, had blown back, as the intelligence folks say. Bobby thought that he would have been killed, not his brother. And now he has this daunting, horrible realization or fear that all of his attempts to get the mob and to get Castro have in some terrible way blown up and come back to haunt his family and resulted in the death of the president, his brother.
Oh, well, now I think we're getting a little closer to the mark here when we start talking
Yeah.
about the mafia and the mob and all of those things. And I think,
Yeah.
there's a couple here that are pretty on the money for me and for you as well. And I think we'll delve deeper into those coming up very shortly. But
Yes.
the next one being the government did it. Perhaps the most frightening theory in circulation is that the Kennedy assassination was an inside job. According to biographer Philip Shannon, that was Bobby's first thought. Apparently, Bobby Kennedy's first suspicion was that it was some rogue element in the CIA, Philip Shannon told NBC News. However, after a meeting with the CIA director John McCone, Kennedy changed his mind. The public was harder to sway, of course. An organization that's shrouded in secrecy and has a motive, the CIA leaders were notably angry with Kennedy over the Bay of Pigs invasion, is always going to be suspect, but the organization maintains it had nothing to do with the crime. While the CIA conspiracy theories make good fodder for movies, they are pure fiction, CIA spokesman Edward Price told NBC. Other insider assassination theories have included a story that William Greer, the driver of the president's car, turned around and shot JFK, a premise based on a poor copy of the Zapruder film. Now, I think it's really interesting with this one that that's enough for people, for some people, is that the CIA director just comes out and says, oh, no, it's fiction. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sure. No problem, Mr. CIA
Right.
director, who's in charge of a organization that tells the biggest lies on purpose
Mhm.
of all time. We'll
Right.
just believe you. No problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really interesting one, that one.
Yeah, it doesn't sit right with me. There's just something about it that just seems too easy,
Right.
too
Yeah,
easy.
absolutely.
So the next one is Ted Cruz's father was somehow involved. So, this is a relatively new one. During the 2016 presidential election, then candidate Trump implied that his fellow Republican candidate, Ted Cruz's father, was a known associate of Lee Harvey Oswald. His father was with Oswald prior to Oswald being, shot, Trump said on Fox News during a phone interview. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. What is this, right? Prior to his being shot, and nobody even brings it up. I mean, they don't even talk about that. That was reported, and no one talks about it.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one because I mean he's correct and nobody talks about it at all. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what the exact relevance is. I mean, obviously in a presidential campaign, he's just trying to sling dirt at Ted Cruz in that
Oh,
situation.
yeah.
But I mean, if that is true, that is an interesting connection. But I'm just not sure how that really relates to the assassination. I mean, it points to, I guess, another player that we maybe weren't
Hmm.
aware of. But I don't know if it
Hmm.
really points to the cause or the who or the why. So
Yeah, no, it's just another higher up person being connected to
right,
someone being connected.
yeah,
Because the fact that Trump brought Oswald into it tells me something. And
mm,
when we get later into the episode, I'll get to that something.
yeah,
But the fact that that was the connection tells me he was just spitting truth, but not knowing where that truth landed.
right, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've gone through the main ones, we have our theories. But we're going to start off with how Kennedy got into that seat in the first place, because there are some rumors of how he got there,
Right.
and they are tied to one of the conspiracy theories.
They sure are, and there's so many. We talked about this. There is so many connections here that, like you said earlier, we probably need a year to go through even just the connections and all of them and how
Yeah.
they all tie in together and relate. But
Yeah.
I think some of the biggest ones are those ties to the mob and to the CIA, and we're going to also get into why Kennedy wasn't all that liked by people in the administration. Particularly people in seats of power, like in the CIA,
Yeah.
because Kennedy was doing things that they weren't a fan of or didn't help
Yeah.
their own cause. So,
Yeah. He was
very
not helping
interesting.
any agendas, but he was doing what he thought was the thing that would benefit the country, the Americas the most.
Yeah, exactly.
And the CIA disagreed.
That's right, because the CIA had their own various agendas at the time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a shame. It's a shame. So it all kicks off actually with his dad, Joseph P. Kennedy. It really all does start there because he was a man in his own right. He was the chairman of the SEC from 1934 to 35 under Roosevelt. Like, he became a very, very rich man, and he did a lot of things. There were rumors that he was into bootlegging
Uh huh.
in the
Yep.
20s.
Hmm.
Um, every road that I went down about that one, it all ended at no, it wasn't. Like, he wasn't into bootlegging. But the thing is with bootlegging, you don't let anyone know that you're doing
Yeah.
it.
The whole idea is it's not on the books, right?
That's right. That's right. You're not going around announcing to people that you're doing it. So there's enough steam there to say that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's just every road I went down, I was hit with a roadblock of no, it's not true. That he
Mm.
made his money in the stocks because he learned he was self-taught how to do the stock exchange.
Hmm.
And next thing you know, he's at the SEC.
Well, isn't that funny that he's made his money in stocks and he's the chairman of the SEC?
Yeah.
That seems a little interesting. And also, he also outlawed the a lot of the laws that made him rich once he
Yep.
was chairman. So
Yep.
it's a very, very suspect right from the beginning.
It is. And the fact that this is the thing that, kicking I love our technology, I do, but I also love the fact that we didn't have technology back then. But this is the time where I think, damn, like if only we had computers, if only we had electronic backup,
Yeah.
that things couldn't be lost. And
Yeah,
It's just a
100%.
shame because it's all gone. Like whatever they
Oh,
had
yeah.
is gone. So there were other rumors that he was definitely tied to the mob. And there are rumors that there were mob bosses that were influential in getting Kennedy into the hot seat.
Yeah.
And his dad was the orchestrator of those. What do we think about those?
Oh,
Those rumors.
I think 100% because you got to think of this, realistically. Like in in the US in that era, like who has actual power? Like the mobs really did have true power and influence.
They did.
And so there was the Eastern mobs, the Western mobs, and so there was rivalries obviously between them. But the way I took it, looking at this was that Joseph Kennedy, so um, John's dad, was playing both sides, both mobs,
Mhm.
and he was connected to both sides, trying to do the whole, give them what they want, give them what they want, get what he wanted from both of them. And
Mhm.
so, as part of that, got his son elected. And because they needed, I can't remember what the states were that they needed exactly, but they needed a few states there, and that they would never get otherwise.
They needed Illinois. They
Right.
needed Illinois, Florida, and New Orleans, I think. Oh no, and Texas. Texas was
Texas,
another one that he was really hated in.
right? Yeah. So they
So
needed the
those were
mob.
the three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that stands to reason because what's the ultimate goal of the Kennedys at that time was to get him elected. And
Yeah.
so what are they going to do? They'll do anything to do it. So
Yeah.
engage the mob.
Yeah.
But that also stands to reason as to why they were upset with him after he was elected because of what happened with him and what happened with Bobby and what they were
Mhm.
doing. Because,
Right.
wow, you look at the mob, what Bobby Kennedy was doing, prosecuting Jimmy Hoffa and the mob bosses like Sam
Yeah.
Giancana as well. Not happy. Like you could
Yeah.
imagine, right? Like how would you feel if you'd gone out on a limb, used all your influence to help get this guy to be president, and now you're finding yourself in a courtroom?
Yes. Yeah. And there are there are words and rumors that Bobby and JFK knew the rumors of their father and the mob ties. So they thought this would stop the mob rumors because I'm sure that didn't look good on his resume, having a
Hmm.
daddy tied to the mob. I'm sure that didn't look good.
Right.
So they did that in order for it to say, well, why would we can't possibly have mob ties because look what we're doing. We're taking them all out.
Yeah.
We're taking them all out. So yeah, I'd be pissed too. It's like, you
Oh,
what now?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
ask for a favor and now you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we've seen The Godfather, so we know what happens if you go against the family, right?
Yeah.
So they had. I'm just trying to make this clear for myself as well. So Chicago was Sam Giancana was the
Mhm.
boss, and John Roselli was there as well, who had ties to the CIA and also ties to Hollywood.
Yeah.
John Roselli, and allegedly had an affair with Marilyn Monroe as well.
Yeah.
And in Florida, there was Santo Traficante
Mhm.
Jr. Don't forget the Junior. I'm sure he gets
Yeah,
touchy
don't
about
forget that.
that. Santo Traficante Jr. in Florida and Cuba. And in New Orleans in Texas was Carlos Ocello. I think that's how
Yeah.
you pronounce it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was all of those different bosses connected to JFK and to
Yeah.
his dad.
And Hoffa too.
And Hoffa as well. Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Oof. Mm-hmm.
You know what I love about Hoffa?
What's
The
that?
only thing I love about him?
Mm.
His middle name,
What is his middle name?
Riddle.
What is it?
Riddle.
Riddle.
Yeah, like riddle me this, which is so ironic
It is.
because his death is such a riddle.
Exactly.
I saw that.
Oh,
I'm like,
that's
you've got
gold.
to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding. That's awesome. I enjoyed that very much.
That is a great irony. A
Yeah.
fantastic one.
Yeah. But I think it's important to mention that the mob had full run. Like they had full control over everything.
Right.
And they could do whatever they wanted whenever they wanted. So this was coming to an end.
Hmm.
So they're pissed.
Of course. Like, again, you've had free reign. You've had your bootlegging era. You've had, you've made your squillions. You've got, all of these dodgy businesses going everywhere where you're making heaps of money. And hang on a minute, what? It's going to end? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean it's going to end?
Yeah. What are we going to do now?
Yeah, right. Exactly. But the thing is, there's that saying that goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right?
Right.
And so you have the mob, you have the CIA, and you also have the Federal Reserve. And so I'm very, very pleased to read through this one because this is extremely interesting and a lot of people wouldn't realize. Now, we're going to do a whole nother thing on the Federal Reserve because that is a whole thing of its own. But this is what Kennedy was going to do as far as the Federal Reserve and why those puppet masters who sit in and above the Federal Reserve pulling the strings of politicians would have been pissed with JFK. Right. So here we go.
Yeah.
On June 4th, 1963, President Kennedy signed Executive Order 11110. In short, it was an order for the Treasury to issue certificates backed by silver bullion, as well as to mint silver dollars that would be considered money. These silver certificates took the form of dollars for the most part, and the notes would say that whatever the denomination on the bill was, it would be repaid in silver to the bearer on demand. Simply put, if you had $1, it was worth $1 in silver. Unfortunately, the executive order didn't stand the test of time. That November, President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, sparking conspiracy theories that the Federal Reserve had a hand in his death, though this hasn't been proven. In 1964, Treasury Secretary Douglas Dillon halted the swap of silver certificates for silver dollars, and on June 24, 1968, barely 5 years since the executive order was announced, swapping dollars for silver coins ended, and America went right back to the exclusive Federal Reserve System. So, tiny little bit of context there. Super interesting, but tiny little bit of context for people who may not know. But the money that is in circulation, those bills, they're not backed by anything. There is no gold there. There is no silver there. There is nothing at all. It's just paper. That's all it is. So what Kennedy was essentially doing was forcing the Federal Reserves and the big banks of the world, the big banking cartels, to actually back the money that they said they had with something real, with something valuable in silver. And that's a big problem for them because it meant they couldn't use their fractional banking system and they couldn't basically screw the world over for more money.
Yes.
So big motivation.
Yeah. And I just want to remind or just the people that may not know that the Federal Reserve is not connected to the government.
Right.
It's its own private entity.
Yep.
So when it has, so when our money has, Canada on it or Australia or United States of America, it's just the money that is for that country. It's not actually coming from any type of government entity.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they don't tell us that. Why don't they tell us that? Why do we have to learn that on the fringes?
Because they want to, and the very reason I believe that it's called Federal Reserve is to try and make it sound like a government organization or a government, government-run facility. But it's not. It's completely private, and it's owned by the big banking cartels. So when they say, our debt's up to, $150 trillion or whatever it is, the debt isn't to themselves. The debt is to the Federal Reserve, which is a private group of banks. So they actually essentially do owe the money. None of it's real, of course. It's all just numbers on a screen. But when they say we have a national debt, it's owed to a private bank in the Federal Reserve, not to themselves as a government.
Crazy.
It is.
Crazy. Okay, so another one, and it ties into a episode we had not too long ago, that JFK was really, he was intimately connected to the secret space program. And when he was really pushing for us to go to the moon, really, really pushing. Remember that speech he made, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to go to the moon.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he needed NASA to get their asses up there because it was a cover up for a bigger thing. They needed to get ships up there so it didn't look suspicious that other things were going on. Like it
Yeah.
was taking the focus off of what was actually happening.
Yeah.
So JFK was said to be in Germany, and he saw the ships and submarines that took equipment and people to Antarctica. Now, if you listen to our episode about the center of the Earth,
Mhm.
Antarctica is said to be one of the gateways in.
Right.
And that is where the Nazis spent a lot of their time. Hitler was obsessed with Antarctica.
Yes. And
So that
well,
makes sense that Antarctica was the jam.
yep.
And apparently, what they were trying to do was they were trying to reverse engineer the submarines so they would be anti-gravity and turn into spaceships. So you could go underwater and into space, because they said it's just a flip of a switch, because submarines defy gravity anyways.
Right.
They defy buoyancy and gravity.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a reverse of it. And apparently they've done it. I don't know.
Wow,
It's just what I heard.
Yeah, we don't have any evidence of that, but geez.
No.
I mean, think about all the things we're not told.
Oh,
And the
yes.
things that we're told to send our attention over that way. So,
Yes.
yeah, I would not put anything past them at all. And for those people out there who may just say, oh, you're talking rubbish. Like, why would the Nazis be in Antarctica? It's just such a fanciful idea. There was an official US mission to Antarctica after World War II to try and find Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
That's not us. We're not saying that.
No.
We didn't make that shit up. That was an official US military mission to Antarctica to try and find Hitler from the Nazis. So go talk to them. It's not us. And it was very well documented as well, but also in our discussion there. But yeah, it's funny that, isn't it, that JFK just has these ties to all these interesting little things everywhere, all over the place.
Yeah, but he was really interested in space.
Yeah.
And so there was something there.
Okay, so there was many reasons, some that we've gone through so far. And you got the dodgy mob bosses, you got the government, you got the space program, Federal Reserve, and the list just keeps mounting of people who were not happy with JF to the K. Now, there's another reason as well, another one, which is what he was planning to do with the Vietnam War, or his distaste for America's involvement in the Vietnam War. Now, yes, he did send troops, he sent military advisors and things like that. Of course, that did happen. But the thing is, in 1963, when things were really going pear-shaped in South Vietnam, and so the president over there, Diem, was basically losing control. He was losing control, and the US were asked to be a part of a military coup to get things back into control. Now, Kennedy was not a fan of that. He was very, very undecided about doing that. And he was also very undecided about America's involvement and ongoing involvement in Vietnam. So another interesting part of that about that. So in 1963, when this happened, the President Diem of South Vietnam was assassinated. And there was at that time, there was do we go into Vietnam and escalate with more troops, or do we not? And so it was very much on tenterhooks at the time. And Lyndon B. Johnson, so vice president at the time, soon to be president, was very keen to go into Vietnam. And I'm not too sure if people are aware of the Bay of Tonkin issue or incident that happened. But basically, it was a false flag where the US was on the edge of going into Vietnam or not. And Lyndon B. Johnson, through various other agencies and all of those things, basically created a false flag where an American ship in the Bay of Tonkin was attacked by the North Vietnamese. But records since showed that no, they weren't attacked by the North Vietnamese. It was a mystery attack. And so it was a false flag. Lyndon B. Johnson arranged it to attack one of their own ships, so attack a U.S. ship as a method to launch into Vietnam and send mass troops into Vietnam and fight over there. So that's something to keep in mind. But the other thing to keep in mind, especially with Johnson and why he was so eager to get over there, is what's one of those things that a lot of people make when there's a war? Money, right? There's lots of guns, there's lots of things, there's uniforms, there's all sorts of things. And if you are a private contractor, you can make money selling to both sides. So in 1955, a directive was issued pushing all federal agencies to use private enterprise and civilian contractors to provide military goods and services. And this reached a whole new level. So that's 1955 leading up to Vietnam. In Vietnam, it went to like a tenfold situation where no longer was it government agencies creating these things. It was private contractors and agencies. So if you had stocks, if you had investments in these private companies and then went to war, obviously you made a buttload of money. So there's another motivation there. And I just wanted to finish this this little section on JFK and Vietnam by just quoting a couple of things. So one quote was from JFK's, I don't know what they call it. It's like his inaugural address, I think, when he took over as president. So one of the things that he said was, and he'd said a lot of stuff before this, but he was talking about what America can do for the world, essentially. And he said, a third asset is our desire for peace. It is sincere, and I believe the world knows it. So you factor in all those military contracts and all those people who stood to benefit from a war happening. And then you have JFK saying that our quest for peace is sincere. We don't want to be fighting. We don't want to be getting engaged in things we shouldn't be getting engaged in. And the interesting part too is, now I did think, I'll put my hand up and say I thought this was JFK's quote, but it was actually Eisenhower who was handing over to JFK. And this was what he said when he was handing over. He said, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. That was Eisenhower handing over JFK. So very, very long time ago, what is happening now and what we see today was very much predicted by those guys back then.
Yeah.
And again, another huge motivation for people wanting JFK out of office.
Absolutely. It was said that he's like, we're not going to go fight a war for someone else. We're not going to go where we're not going to go poking our nose in where it doesn't belong.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that was a huge change for American military to not poke their nose in where it doesn't belong. He said, if another country needs assistance, we will go in and assist them, but we're not going to do that for them. Like, we're not just going to walk in and fight the war for you, nor are we going to come in and pick one.
Yes, exactly.
And that's not how, the way I see that the wars go is that someone picks a fight and everyone else kind of follows along. It's like a bullying tactic.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Like, he genuinely wanted peace, really.
Yeah,
and that's such a good thing. And it's so sad that people wanted him gone for such a, in part for wanting peace. I mean, it's really a shame. It is a deep, deep shame. One more thing I just remembered on the Vietnam thing as well, and it ties back to the CIA, is that the CIA, now I just add this in. The CIA, where do people think they get most of their money from? Do they get it from the government? Because remember, all their operations are secretive. So many people in the government don't even know what they do at all. And so where do they get their funding from? Yes, surely from the government, of course. But where do they get the funding for the operations that are off the books? Wow, in Vietnam, they were running drugs out of Laos. And so they had their own drug operation. And we can get into that another day about how the
Yeah, we
same thing's
will.
happening in Afghanistan. But the CIA did not want to leave Vietnam because there goes their guys. There goes their ruse that we have a reason to be here other than
Mhm.
to sell drugs and
Right.
to move drugs around.
Yeah.
And so, and that obviously ties back to mafia as well, because who is also tied up in drugs? The mafia. So
Right.
the CIA working with the mafia, there's all of these reasons why they just did not want to leave Vietnam. They didn't want JFK to be prosecuting all the, it's just
Yeah.
many, many reasons.
Yeah. And then there's the Bay of Pigs.
Right.
Like the CIA, because JFK really didn't know much about Bay of Pigs. It was kind of like it was a very, very closed off operation, and it was the assassination of Castro,
Hmm.
and it failed miserably. And JFK took the hit. He took the hit, but what he said behind closed doors, because it was a CIA failed operation, from what he thought, like his point of view,
Yeah,
I'm going to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces.
that's right. That's right. And he fired, what was the guy's name? Dulles.
Oh, Dulles.
Yeah. He fired the
Alan
CIA
Dulles.
director, Alan Dulles.
Yeah, after
And
that.
exactly. Now, and that will become more interesting shortly. But great
It will.
point, because the Bay of Pigs, JFK didn't even know about it, like you said.
Mm-mm.
It was actually organized by Lyndon B. Johnson, because the two were trying to, like, Lyndon B. Johnson was trying to do it without JFK knowing, so that he could say, look what I did. I'm doing great things for America. Look at me, look at me. And because I believe, 1964 was the election year coming up, wasn't it? So
Thanks for you.
he wanted to have that rolling into the election, but JFK found out about it and then surprised everybody by announcing it on, I believe it was a debate, presidential debate or a campaign debate.
It was
And-
Nixon.
Right. That's
It was a
right.
debate with Nixon.
That's
And
right.
Nixon couldn't admit
That's right.
that it was happening because they couldn't admit American involvement.
Yep.
So it was just this whole hullabaloo. And
Yeah.
you would be surprised how many times Lyndon Johnson's name comes up in shady shit.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
His name came up over and over and over again.
Yep.
For a man being his successor, he shouldn't be in so much shady shit.
Exactly. Yep. Well, do you remember the slogan? I don't know if you remember this that slogan. It was surrounding Vietnam, but it was "Go all the way with LBJ." Like that was the slogan and the war cry to say, support him, support the war, support everything that he's doing. But yeah, he's involved in all of this shady shit, and so that whole Bay of Pigs thing, like, yeah. Kennedy took the hit because it was worthwhile for him to bring it up and be proactive about it and say, I know about it, like this is happening or this has been planned and, all of that kind of stuff. So it made sense for him to take the hit because then he looked like, I guess, the good guy in that situation and the humble one,
Yeah.
And, but yeah, of course, then he said, CIA, bye-bye. We don't need you anymore. We don't want you.
Yeah. Canned Dulles.
Yep.
And so it was starting to build up. Whole lot of things starting to build up.
Yep.
So I think it's important for us to cover the other attempts on his life within the 3 weeks prior
Absolutely.
to the actual assassination, because they tie into a little conversation we had not too long ago about certain states and their mob ties.
Yes.
There are no coincidences.
None at all.
And you know how I love inconsistencies, and you know how I love when things keep popping up, and
oh yeah,
it's just too convenient.
Yes.
Convenient.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah. So there were also 2 other attempts on JFK in the preceding weeks. So there was one in Chicago 3 weeks before and one in Florida 4 days before. And apparently Oswald was supposed to be the patsy for all of them. So how is it possible that he was going to be the patsy for every single one? And when we get into Oswald, I'm just going to say it now because they're going to be in 2 separate episodes. They found 3 wallets of Oswald's.
Who's got 3 wallets? Like, I barely keep track of one.
Exactly.
You know, like
Exactly.
let alone having 3. And let's be honest,
Exactly.
like, pants aren't made for that. You got 2 back pockets, so you can have max 2 wallets in there, not 3.
Yeah. Yeah, they found 3 wallets. So it's all adding up. Like it all starts to tie together.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, so if you're looking at Chicago and Florida, those 2 places had mob ties to the Kennedys. The mob ties to the Kennedys that got him into the seat.
Yeah.
So he had no license, no car, and no money. How was he getting to all these places?
Right.
Come on. No way. And there was another guy, Thomas Valley. He was another patsy for Chicago. He was ex-Marine. He had a rifle and a pistol, the same as Oswald. He had 3,000 rounds of ammo. And he got a job at the plant overlooking the motorcade route just before the attempt, like just before the presidential procession.
Yep.
And him and Oswald joined the YMCA at the same time. So essentially what they were trying to do is they were trying to get someone who could be Oswald. Like they could be interchangeable. Like they made their lives parallel almost. And apparently the site, the first Chicago site, looked identical as the final site, the final assassination site. So there was a building. It was like all 3 of them did. Right. All 3 of them did. There was a big building. It was going to be busy. There was lots of windows open. There was a motorcade way, and there was a sharp left turn. So whatever their master plan was involved those things. Like that's where they practiced. They said, okay, this is what we know we can do. How do we do it? Where can we find a spot that is identical in all 3 places? Because it had to be before December 1st. And there's a reason for it. We'll get into it. But there was Chicago, there was Florida. And when those 2 didn't go through, Dallas was the final. Like that was the final shot they had. No pun intended. That was their final attempt.
Yeah.
It was that or bust.
And if they didn't do it there, that was it. They were out of chances. And interestingly, like the Secret Service found out about that that attempt, and they cancelled the trip, or JFK cancelled the trip.
Yes.
So very, very interesting. And you're right, like getting these patsies together, you know, lined up like for like, makes it very easy to switch them out and make them interchangeable. So I just think it's you know, it's like you said, there is no coincidences whatsoever, especially when you think about, because we always talk about on this podcast, we talk about the motivations, like what is the motivation and who is motivated by that in this situation?
Who benefits?
Who benefits? Like, what is that? And then work backwards from there. And there's so many people in this instance that benefit and, you know, would have a vested interest in linking up with each other as well to orchestrate such a thing. So, and we will talk more about that, I feel, in our part 2, where we talk about the post incident, or the incident itself, and then post. But what was it that in the Florida attempt that claimed that Trafficante was behind an attempt to kill Kennedy during the visit to Tampa, and he allegedly called off the attack after an informant alerted law enforcement. So the law enforcement, if they were aware of it, just did they let the Secret Service know, or like what happened? Like who actually cancelled that trip?
Well, I'm unsure. Now, did Kennedy cancel Florida, or did he just leave Jackie at home?
That was the one he left Jackie at home.
Yeah, he left Jackie at home because I guess the CIA caught wind that their plan. They're quote unquote. I gotta be really careful here, or I'm gonna get disappeared. So the CIA caught wind that this was happening, so they had to, and I guess because if local law enforcement knew, then they had to do something about it. They
Right.
had to call it off.
Yes. Yeah.
So he still went. There was a reason why he had to go. He had to make a speech or something. There was a reason behind it, but he left Jackie behind. He
That's
said,
right.
Jackie,
Yeah.
you're not coming. And yeah, it was, so that's 2 in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the final one.
Yeah. Last chance.
Yeah. So there was apparently this guy, this Cuban gentleman, Gilberto Lopez. And so he was allegedly poised to take the fall in Tampa, who he had the same description as Oswald once again. And Gilberto was the patsy to the patsy. So they had patsies to the patsies to the patsies. There were so many similarities to their movements and appearance. They were making sure that someone took the fall. They wanted to make sure that someone took the fall. And I think it was always going to be Oswald for whatever reason. I don't know what the reason would be. I got my theories, but
Mm-hmm.
they needed it to be him. And if someone else could be the patsy on his, because anybody could be anybody.
Right.
Because if you're
Well,
just saying, hey, it's this guy,
could it have been? Could the reason have been they always wanted it to be Oswald, that he was a double agent and he was
yes,
working with the KGB from Russia as well?
could be. Could
That's just
be.
a thought.
Yeah.
Like because they had all these patsies for the patsies for the patsies for the patsies, like a
Yeah.
Russian doll. Like there's just patsy after patsy
Oh,
after patsy.
good tie-in to the KGB.
Well, there you go. But
Not just a pretty face you are.
sometimes
So
not
smart.
even. Well, but yeah, he was always going to take the fall, and
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. And it's also interesting that no one knows the whereabouts of Oswald, not his wife, not his friends, not his employer. No one knows his whereabouts around the time of the Florida attempt.
Hmm.
To this day,
Yep.
no one knows where he was. Probably because it's none of our business,
Right.
because he didn't do anything. In my own humble opinion, he didn't do anything. So it's none of our goddamn business where he was. So going back to the location of the similarities of the locations. So it was at the Floridian Hotel in Florida, and it was almost identical to the book depository. It was a large building, windows open, a hotel was full. They were told there was no way they could tie it down with security, and there was a hard left turn in front of the hotel. So what the hell?
Well, the hard left turn. When you just said that, then because I obviously
Yeah,
read this, but when you just said hard left turn, then
yeah,
it got me thinking. Got me thinking. Why all of those locations had to have a hard left turn right before the kill zone, and
yeah.
it's to slow the motorcade down. Because all of the reports are that the motorcade on that day was traveling slower than what it normally would. That hard left turn means you had to go slow, almost stop to
Right.
get around that corner. And if every single location had that turn, it meant that the speed was at a rate that was able to be achieved, as in shot was able to be achieved. Because if they're going faster, it becomes more difficult. Holy crap. I
And
just
there's your
realized that
military mind kicking in.
then. There it goes.
Love it. Didn't even think about, yeah, it would. It would slow it down.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
when you're thinking about trying to ambush anybody or, create that kill zone or, trap zone for people, you got to think about, it's all about slowing things, bunching things up, getting everybody into one area and making you think life as easy as possible for whatever you plan to do. So
Okay.
that makes complete sense now.
Okay. Good one. Good catch. I like it.
Mm,
So, just to wrap up this episode,
hmm.
I think we need to discuss the fact that the Secret Service went out drinking the night before of the assassination.
They sure did.
They sure did. They were out till like 5 o'clock in the morning with the hookers and the drinks and everything. They went bar hopping.
Yep.
And the story goes that they were, because there was no alert, there was no high alert for that one, they could let loose. I call bullshit.
I agree. Absolute steaming pile of bullshit, that one.
Yeah.
It absolutely blows my mind to think that professional security team, i.e., the Secret Service for the President of the United States,
Hmm.
would be out drinking till 5 a.m. the next morning. And they had to be up at 7 that
Yep.
morning to be on detail and ready to go.
Mhm.
So very, very, very odd behavior. And
Yes.
if that was true, if there was no alert for that one, why was there no alert for that one when there'd already been two in the last few weeks? Why was there no
Yeah.
alert for that one? Because it was the exact same location type with the
Yeah.
dog leg turn, the building up high, the very contained, hill zone.
Yeah.
Why was it not an alert? Who decided it wasn't an alert if it wasn't?
And why wouldn't they take the precaution?
Exactly.
Like, man, there was 2 other attempts in, like, the past 3 weeks and just was 4 days ago. Why don't we just pay attention? Like, until the president is done what he's doing on his little tour,
Yeah.
we are all on high alert. Something is going on.
Yes, exactly.
You do
Yep.
not just say, "Oh, well, I haven't heard anything today.
Right.
Just gonna let loose."
Yeah, exactly.
No.
You don't do that.
I think, and this is just my humble opinion, don't come for me. Don't make me go disappeared. I think it was guilt. I think it was guilt drinking.
Oh, I think so too. I agree with you 100%. And we are going to get into, like, we're wrapping up this episode right now, but part two of this series is going to be very interesting because we're going to get into the event on the day and
Mhm.
what the theories are around who actually did it, not Lee Harvey Oswald, and the Secret Service's involvement in said incident and cover up. So I'm very, very keen to get into that. And yeah, like you said, nobody comes ziplining into my house. I don't want the door getting busted down and become a Jimmy Hoffa, please. These are just our theories and opinions, but we feel like, especially with what we're going to do in part two, a fair bit based in some factual evidence there. So
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah. Excellent. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for like wanting to cover this.
Well, thank you. It's so interesting. I always love having these discussions with you. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, and I hope everybody enjoyed this and join us for part two.
Take care, guys.